Welcome to the Hockey Writers Maple Leafs Lounge, a weekly show from our Toronto Maple Leafs writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, prospects, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the blue and white. Come on in and pull up a chair. Welcome to the Maple Leafs Lounge.
And welcome back to the Maple Leafs Lounge. I am your host, Peter Baracchini, and as always, I'm joined by my colleague and writer for the Toronto Maple Leafs at the Hockey Writers, Alex Hobson. We got a lot to talk about. We actually have a very special guest coming on later in the show to discuss what happened in the Leafs' last game against the Vancouver Canucks, and that's all I'm just going to drop right there. Take that what you will. And if you already aren't subscribed to the Hockey Writers newsletter, morningskate.io, be sure to sign up for that, where you won't miss any articles that are done by all of our fantastic writing crew at the Hockey Writers, including fun tidbits, facts, trivias, and of course, the odd GIF every now and then, because who doesn't love animated GIFs, and especially one of Trevor Zegras' post All-Star game with his dodgeball tribute. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get into the most, I want to say most important news, but a big signing for the Maple Leafs this week in regards to their goaltending depth. And Joseph Woll was extended to a 3-year contract worth $766,000 per season. Alex, what is this a move that needed to be done? And also, what does this mean for Woll's trajectory and how much he's improved, not only in the NHL, but also the way that he's played in the AHL this season?
Well, the Leafs clearly see something that they like in Joseph Woll, seeing that they offered him a 3-year extension. I think it gives them a lot of control over him, and it also gives him a little bit of security with the team. So it's sort of a win-win in that situation, or in that case. I think it's still a little too early to really make any sort of judgments off of what the Leafs have in Joseph Woll. He's only been able to play 3 NHL games this year, and one of the games was really good. The other 2 were kind of meh. So I do think that he needs some more time to develop in the AHL. Having said that, now the fact that he's got a contract extension now, the Leafs have a reliable option to go to in the event that either Jack Campbell or Peter Mrazek go down with an injury, like we've seen earlier on this season. Yeah, overall, I mean, he certainly had a better season this year with the Marlies than he has in years past. It took him a little while to sort of find his footing in the AHL, but the Leafs clearly have some sort of confidence in him if they want to extend him a contract like that. So overall, yeah, I think it's a solid signing for all parties, and it'll be interesting to see how he sort of responds to it and what kind of role he ends up carving out in Toronto.
Yeah, it was really a shame to see him go down with the injuries that he's had, considering the promise and potential that they instilled in him, drafted him in the 3rd round in 2016. And like you said, good numbers this season with the Maple Leafs. And he came in at a great time when Peter Mrazek went down, and he, answered the call. Albeit, you saw some nervous moments where he overshot with his movements, got a little bit too, I would say a little bit over aggressive in trying to locate the puck. But, he still managed to do his job and keep the puck out of the net. This year with the Toronto Marlies, again, same situation where he seemed a bit more calm knowing that he was in that situation. I think the call to the NHL caught him by surprise, and, he settled in. But I think now that he's back, he's playing well. And I do think that, especially in the event with Peter Mrazek right now, where they may try and look to move him in the offseason, considering he's gaining some interest, you have a really good option in Joseph Woll, and it's a cheap option where if you do move his contract, you have more money, you have more space, and Joseph Woll signed for under $1 million for the next 3 seasons. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, beyond this year, there is a little bit of a question mark when it comes to the Leafs goaltending situation, just because Jack Campbell hasn't been re-signed yet. And obviously, we all know his contract's up at the end of the year. And Peter Mrazek, obviously, he's got a little more security than Campbell because he's in for 3 years. But having said that, he hasn't really done enough yet to, I'd say, really run away with that kind of security that, the Leafs might be more comfortable giving to Jack Campbell. So overall, it's not like, you're looking at the Leafs from 2018 and that you've got Freddie Anderson locked in as your number one for the next 3 years. So I think the Woll extension helps in that sense too, because in the event that Jack Campbell, signs elsewhere and the Leafs are left with Peter Mrazek and another goalie to fill, I think Joseph Woll is at a point now where I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable giving him backup minutes full time, but I think, if it came to that, I'd be comfortable enough to give him some looks as the backup goalie and, sort of give him an opportunity to get himself comfortable in the NHL and really sort of find a role with the team. But obviously, like I said, as of right now, I think he's comfortable as the third goalie. And the extension, I think more than anything else, just gives him security and it gives the team security. So in that sense, I don't have anything to complain about.
I think it's a win-win for both sides, essentially. And, again, 4 games in his stint looked really great aside from that, mess that was the game against the Winnipeg Jets, which we won't get into just yet. Maybe later on when we, the rivalry ensues. But, Woll, for the most part, again, he looked great. Again, some nervous moments, but at the same time, the promise is there. And I think that because they were happy with what they saw here, albeit small sample, his play in the AHL, I think there's really the confidence that maybe he can amount to something. And if he continues to develop, then they do have someone reasonable in the future. And that's always important because, hey, goaltending is going to be an issue, or not an issue, but a main factor. And we're seeing the importance of that right now. Moving on to trade talk. And of course, we're getting closer to the trade deadline. We're a month plus out from the March 21st deadline. And there was news, I believe I saw from David Pagnotta from the fourth period, that the Maple Leafs are trying to use Travis Dermott as trade bait. And as we saw during the Maple Leafs broadcast, Elliot Friedman also reported that the Maple Leafs are working towards trying to move Nick Ritchie and his contract. Now, my main question is, what do you try to do in trying to get a return? Because I know that Travis Dermott has had his ups and downs. Is it going to be enough to try and bring some more help? Nick Ritchie, his contract is up for 2.5 for another year. Teams are looking to try and retain salary or see if the Maple Leafs can try and retain salary on that. But for 1 year, I don't think they're going to do that. So what do you think, Alex, is going to be the best outcome for either Dermott or Nick Ritchie?
Well, Nick Ritchie's a tough one because obviously the fact that I don't think he's played any games since mid-January at this point. And the fact that he's making the money that he is, and it just hasn't worked out the way he hoped it would, or the way the Leafs hoped it would, it's not going to be easy to move him. So I feel like if anything, the Leafs will probably end up moving him as sort of a, I don't know, sort of a throw-in if they were to poach a rental or poach a player from a rebuilding team, say like the Arizona Coyotes. I'm just throwing them out there. I don't know if there's anyone on the Coyotes besides Jacob Chychrun that the Leafs would be interested in, but either way, I think that there is still some value in Nick Ritchie for rebuilding teams and teams that have the cap space to work with. Because if you look at the best case scenario and say, I'll just use Arizona as an example. If the Arizona Coyotes were to acquire Nick Ritchie and put him into a role where he's guaranteed top 6 minutes every night, and they really give him every single possible opportunity to succeed, which is what the Leafs tried to do with him. But at the same time, the Leafs gave him all the opportunities in the world to succeed. The difference is that they've got much better options than him. So when it didn't work out, it's not like this is a project that they had to stick to for the entire season. Right. So the Coyotes, on the other hand, for example, even if he doesn't immediately start lighting it up, who else are you going to play in your top 6? Right. So if the Leafs were to trade Ritchie to someone like the Coyotes, he were to get those regular top 6 minutes with the team, maybe find his footing again and, become that 25 goal scorer that he was with the Bruins last year, all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who could potentially garner a return next season. And, the Coyotes being in that position and rebuilding, you're looking for guys who you can get the most out of value wise and then trade at the deadline to gain more assets. So I think that there's a home for Nick Ritchie with a rebuilding team like that. In terms of Travis Dermott, it's kind of hard to say because I want this guy to succeed in Toronto so much. You know, you watch him play, he's a very talented skater. He's a very mobile player. And, you know, you can tell that the tools are there. It's just, the problem is for me so far, he's just been too painfully average. And I find that when he makes a mistake, it's as bad as a Jake Gardiner mistake. And he's just not somebody right now, especially with the emergence of Rasmus Sandin, that the Leafs can really justify, you know, I guess setting him a role in stone for the next couple of years, because you've got Sandin there. You've got to worry about Jake Muzzin on the second pairing. So I think at this point, Dermott's another one of those players who might be able to succeed a little more elsewhere if he's got a team who will give him a role that will give him a little more ice time, give him more of an opportunity to succeed. Having said that, I'm not quite sure what his value would be. I think he would probably be the roster player. If you're looking at a hypothetical trade for a guy at the deadline from a team that's selling, you typically look at a package to the effect of a first round pick, a prospect, and a roster player. I think Dermott would probably be that roster player because he's a guy who's got potential, but he's also not somebody that you'd really have to worry too much about trading because he still needs to show that potential. So it's sort of like a work in progress in that sense.
I do agree in the sense that if you were to do a massive package deal to bring in a player with term, which is what Kyle Dubas has said that he wanted to do instead of just getting a rental UFA at the end of the season, Dermott probably would be that potential piece or throw-in piece along with Nick Ritchie to try and get something going. Thing is, for me right now, he's 25 and considering where he's at right now, still playing third line minutes, really hasn't made the jump or stand out when given an opportunity to possibly play in the top four role. We saw that the beginning of training camp or even preseason didn't really impress. And even Sheldon Keefe said, you know, you got players like Sandin and Liljegren fighting for a spot. And lo and behold, Sandin and Liljegren are creating amazing chemistry with each other right now. 4 points in 33 games. I do think that at some point you are going to move Travis Dermott. Even if it's not for a massive haul return, if you're moving in a sense that where it's like a contract in, contract out kind of thing, where you do bring in, as you mentioned too, because I know you want him, Scott Mayfield, and maybe even sweeten the pot with them, maybe a mid-round pick next year because the Leafs don't have one. I think that's maybe something that you try to look at as well. For Nick Ritchie, I mean, again, it's similar like Travis Dermott. You want him to succeed. They gave him every opportunity and it just didn't quite work out. So I think the priority for them to move that 2.5 right now in the minors is going to be their priority. And maybe even if you could package both in one deal and maybe get a roster player that's a solid depth piece and even a mid-round pick or two, I think maybe that can be a really great starting point, because at that point you're moving on from $4 million total with both players. And, you know, depending on who comes in and what's going to happen in the offseason, that $4 million is going to make a huge difference moving forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it is just a matter of trying to move on from guys that maybe have kind of lost their spot in Toronto, and you're just trying to get them a better opportunity to succeed. You know, when we list guys like Travis Dermott and Nick Ritchie, I don't think these guys are too much of hot commodities on the market. I think, you know, it's more you're trying to trade these guys and give them a better opportunity to succeed, and then you let your other assets like your first round picks and your top prospects do the talking in terms of sweetening the pot. But on the other hand, at the same time, Travis Dermott and Nick Ritchie, they are both kind of getting up there in age. I believe Nick Ritchie's 25, 26. I think are they both 25? Or
Travis Dermott is. I just lost
Ritchie's
my tab for cap friendly right now. There we go. Nick Ritchie is 26. So 26, they're already at that older point now where they are what they are. And maybe a chance where maybe they turn into a Carter Verhaeghe is long gone at this point.
Yeah, so it would be a little hard to kind of sell that as, hey, these guys still have potential, like maybe you can try and get something out of them. But I think worst case scenario, like I was saying with Ritchie in Arizona, you know, you might not get a version of him that he was expected to be when he was drafted 10th overall in 2014, but you might have him in a better situation with less pressure, and who knows, guy gets hot, trade deadline comes around, you all of a sudden this guy's value is shooting through the roof. So yeah, it's gonna be tough to, I'd say, move those guys as assets, but I definitely think that there's an opportunity for them to, at the very least, use them as throw-in players for other teams.
It's trade deadline time, and usually when the rumors start going, it's always going to be a talking point, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just to recap right now, if you haven't signed up for our newsletter, morningskate.io, please be sure to do so. We got a lot of fantastic articles from our writing team that are always on display for your reading enjoyment, and also on little other fun little tidbits, facts, and just the newsletter to brighten up your day. It really is the best thing for you, even when things may not seem like it. It puts a smile on my face every single time to see the content that comes out from there every single time. Jumping ship from the NHL to, a tournament where there were supposed to be NHL players, but not at the moment. But on the bright side, the Olympics have already begun, especially the men's tournament. The women's tournament has been fantastic, and we're already into the semifinals. But in terms of the Toronto Maple Leafs, they have 3 prospects over there: Matthew Knies, Nick Abruzzese, and Pontus Holmberg. And honestly, from the first glimpses of whatever games that they've played, because they're barely out of the round robin stage, I have been thoroughly impressed with all 3 of those prospects. And Alex, before I get to my take, I want to hear what you have to say about the 3 prospects in sort of like a Cole's Notes kind of summary situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matthew Knies looks like an NHL player out there. And I know that Leaf fans might be getting ahead of themselves a little bit, saying this guy can make the team out of training camp next year. But I think that the Leafs are going to let him go back to the University of Minnesota and let him play out another season there before signing him to an entry-level contract. But the fact that the Leafs were able to pull out a guy like Matthew Knies, he's got the size at 6'3". He's got the power forward game to him. He's also got a very underrated shots, and he's got the work ethic of a Zach Hyman. I think the fact that the Leafs were able to pull this guy out of the second round has potential to be a massive steal for Kyle Dubas and co throughout the next couple of years. Having said that, I do think that he needs a little more time to develop, but I think from what we've been able to see so far, the signs are very encouraging. Nick Abruzzese, on the other hand, is he's very interesting to me, because here's a guy, he was drafted in 2019 as a 4th round pick. And at the time, there wasn't too much about him that Leaf fans were happy with. He was 5'9". I know that a lot of Leaf fans, they love to go for the guys who have a 6 at the start of their height. And so to see Abruzzese, 5'9", a guy that he had a decent season in the USHL, nothing too crazy for where they drafted him, I believe. I don't know if he was an overager at the time, but I think it was his draft plus 1 year. And so at the time, yeah, maybe not that great of a pick, but at the same time, in his years at Harvard, since that time, or since when the Leafs drafted him, and since, they brought him into the organization, he's turned into a completely different player at Harvard. And at the Olympics, I think he's been very underrated. And, shout out Nick Ritchie on Twitter for pointing this out initially. He's a guy who I could honestly see the Leafs signing to an entry-level contract at the end of the year and either giving him, obviously bringing him in to join the Marlies for what could be the end of their season. At the same time, he's also a guy could be worth giving a look on the Leafs. So I think he's been progressing a little bit faster than other people. I just went on a tangent about how Leaf fans may not have been too thrilled with the pick back when they selected him, but I mean, if you look at any Leafs top 10 prospect lists, Abruzzese's right there near the top. So I'd say he's worked his way into the top 5 prospect conversation for this organization. And it's been very impressive to see what he's been able to accomplish so far. And in terms of Josh Ho-Sang, I mean, I watched the tail end of that Canada versus China game this morning, and they were mentioning on the broadcast how his hands never stop moving. Like, guys will corral the puck and they'll control it at their own pace, but Josh Ho-Sang is just constantly dribbling the puck, moving it back and forth, puck handling. And it's, they weren't wrong after watching him on the broadcast this morning. I like what he's been able to do. I think he's been making the most of his opportunity. He had 2 assists today. I believe he had an assist against the States as well. So yeah, I mean, you've got a guy who's producing at the Olympics, and who knows, maybe they'll have a look at him at the deadline.
Yeah, Matthew Knies has just been absolutely outstanding. And you mentioned his size, his scoring ability, everything. And we see what he's able to do at the NCAA level, coming in as a freshman and just being absolutely dominant. And now he comes into a senior tournament where, these are still pro players, albeit not at the NHL level. They're still top players at their respective league. And he's still coming in and he's making an impact. And, for someone like Nick Abruzzese, like you mentioned, I remember reading up on him after he was drafted, and they just raved about his work ethic. And on that goal that he set up, coincidentally, to Matthew Knies against Team Germany, he's carrying the puck around the net, loses his balance, and he still manages to find that finesse and that energy or not energy, but determination to still try and locate Knies in the slot. And Knies is able to get the puck off, and both, celebrate with each other, because, who doesn't want to see two least prospects connecting on a goal and celebrating after that? So that was a really nice moment. And yeah, you mentioned Josh Hosang too. You mentioned his hands never stop moving, but his feet are always in motion and he's always moving. And I think that's why the Maple Leafs saw something in him, because of his mobility, his hands, and his shot is very underrated too. I mean, he's being more of a playmaker right now, but you love to see what he's able to accomplish at the tournament for Canada. And I don't know, for me, Pontus Holmberg, he just continues to, again, he's one of those prospects that isn't on a lot of radars, but he's he's quickly gaining attention. And especially after what he was able to accomplish in the postseason with the Vancouver Lakers in 2020-21, where he was a point per game player in the postseason. That to me is really impressive. And then he's following that up right now with 28 points in 34 games this season. And, he's still in, I believe it was in the first game where he made a really nice assist to Lucas Wallmark. And I was just absolutely enthralled or just excited at the way that he was able to make that assist, and really making high level plays. He may not be, a top six player, but he's definitely going to be someone that could do a lot of damage for the Maple Leafs in the bottom half of the forward roster. And I really do think that he has a lot of potential for him. I think that maybe at some point he does come over, and, we want to see him more and how he adapts to the North American game in the Toronto Marlies. I really do think there's a lot of promise there with him.
Yeah, I like that you brought up Pontus Holmberg, because the Leafs have a way with, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is about them, but they have a way of just picking these late round Swedish players out of like the 6th or 7th round. No one's ever heard of them, and they fly under everybody's radar until they come to North America. And I think that Pontus Holmberg is going to make himself a household name once he, if he does. I mean, I'm hoping that he properly signs with the Leafs and he joins the Marlies. But I think assuming that he does, he's going to be the next guy. You saw it happen with Andreas Johnsson. You saw it happen with Pierre Engvall. Now you're looking at another guy who could potentially be that next guy to come over from Sweden. Guys may not have heard of him because he was picked so late in the draft, but you bring him over to North America and you give him a proper opportunity to really showcase his skills. And sometimes that's all it takes. So it'll be interesting to see, like you said, how he develops to the North American game once he eventually gets here.
And let's also throw in Ryan Torberg, who was a 7th round pick of the Maple Leafs in 2020. So another possible late round gem that can join the ranks of Johnsson, Engvall. And now definitely we could try and slowly add Holmberg and Torberg into that discussion as well. We are going to take a really, really quick break here at the Maple Leafs Lounge while we get set for our guests to come on. So don't go anywhere. And just like that, we have Matthew Zator joining the Maple Leafs Lounge. And if you aren't aware of what recently happened, the Toronto Maple Leafs played the Vancouver Canucks, which is why we have our Canucks expert, writer, and also host of the THW Prospects Corner show on YouTube. Matt, thanks for joining with us.
Yeah, happy to be here and happy that the Canucks were able to eke out a win against you guys.
Yeah, I think eke is the perfect word, because the Toronto Maple Leafs had 50 plus shots against them. I mean, what can you say about Thatcher Demko? There's a reason why he was given the starting reins and why they have so much faith in him. How was it that, the Toronto Maple Leafs got Demko'd in this game when the whole entire ice was tilted in the Maple Leafs' favor?
Well, one thing is like we've seen in the past what Demko can do. In that, but like they call it bubble Demko against the Vegas Golden Knights, and that's what he looked like in this game. I mean, everything was hitting him. I mean, he allowed 2 goals, but the 2 goals were like, great pass by Tavares to Matthews. I mean, no goalie is going to stop that. And then the other one was just a, scramble in front. So, I mean, or no, tip. That was a tip from Kasha. So, I mean, this is how you have to beat this guy right now. And Demko's he's shown it all year. I mean, for the Canucks, they shouldn't be doing this every game, allowing 40 plus shots and expect Demko to do this, but he's been able to. And the thing is I was saying yesterday, I'm discussing with some other guys about, it's, if the Canucks have a great foundation, they've got great goaltender, great defenseman Quinn Hughes and Pedersen, and a great foundation to build on. And, you build from the net out, and Demko's, he's not even he's kind of maybe entering his prime now. And he's been Demkoing a few teams this year. So, I mean, it's not just the Maple Leafs. He's been doing it all year, and he probably won't be in the Vezina conversation, unfortunately, because of that stretch of games he had where he was allowing a bunch of goals, but he deserves to be at least talked about it there. And so, I mean, he's just been a great for the Canucks this year.
Just overall, 71 shot attempts for the Maple Leafs at 5-on-5, 91 in all situations. And the heat map for the Toronto Maple Leafs just outweighed that of the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, Matt, we were just talking about the trade deadline, Peter and I there. And obviously, if you're reading our work and if you're reading the work of, if you're reading your own work, I guess, there's the Leafs and the Canucks seem to frequently be connected when it comes to the trade deadline. And 2 guys, obviously, that Kyle Dubas may have gotten an extended look at yesterday are Luke Schenn and JT Miller. 2 guys that, I personally wrote about Luke Schenn the other day. I know our other Leafs writer, Shane Sini, wrote a piece about JT Miller. I know that you've written a piece about the Leafs and Canucks making a trade in the past. Tell us a little bit about Miller and Schenn and what you think they might go for at the deadline.
Well, I mean, if you talk to Canucks fans, they don't want Luke Schenn going anywhere. He was signed as a depth defenseman. I mean, this is what he was signed for. He wasn't signed to be a top 4 guy. He wasn't signed to play tons of minutes, but because of injuries, because of COVID protocol, he's been pushed into a higher role and he's thrived in it. I mean, he's probably the most physical defenseman that the Canucks have. He's got leadership. He's won back-to-back cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He wasn't a passenger on those teams either. I mean, he came in as a depth guy, played, again, stepped in because of injury and played really well. Teams are going to want that at the deadline. If the Canucks put him on the market, he's going somewhere. Teams can always use, the Maple Leafs can use a guy like that. They drafted him way back when. And
did they ever?
He didn't turn into the defenseman that everyone thought he was going to, that top pairing shutdown guy, but he's turned into a very serviceable, very great depth defenseman and a guy that can step into the top 4 when needed. So, matter of Schenn, any team's going to, will be love to have him on their team, especially if they're a playoff contender, Stanley Cup team. Yeah, for sure. JT Miller's a different animal, I think, because he's got 1 more year on his contract. The Canucks aren't going to be rushing to trade this guy. I think they're going to wait till the offseason. But stranger things have happened at the deadline. A team sends the Canucks an offer that basically can't refuse. You look at it because, he's been everything for the Canucks this year. You really don't want to trade him because he's been so good. I think they're going to look at re-signing him if they don't trade him. But if he goes on the market, there's going to be a plethora of suitors that will want him. So it's going to be a bidding war, I think, if that happens.
JT Miller is over a point per game, 48 and 47 games. And he's just, I really am interested to see how this plays out because they got him over from the Tampa Bay Lightning, just not really standout numbers, but good secondary numbers, 40 points with the Lightning in 2018-19. And then he comes over, has a breakout season with 72 points in 19-20. He looked absolutely strong in 2020-21, despite dealing with COVID early on, and he's taken another step forward this season. It really is interesting to see how this plays out, because I don't think that the Maple Leafs, obviously, I think the Maple Leafs need help on defense, but getting JT Miller would be really helpful as well, because again, who wouldn't want that type of player on their roster? Stepping away from the Maple Leafs for a second, I want to talk about a former Vancouver Canuck, Tyler Toffoli, who could be on his way out of Montreal. There's been rumblings that maybe the LA Kings could possibly get him. How much does this, and I hate to bring up old wounds, because let's face it, I'm a Maple Leaf fan. We always bring up old wounds. How much of a difficult or how different would the situation be if Tyler Toffoli remained in Vancouver and they didn't have that, sort of deadlock between the cap situation? And now he had a good season with Montreal, not so much this season because the whole team hasn't played well, but going on a team rebuilding in the LA Kings, I'm curious to see how that'll play out, because they got a lot of great depth and Toffoli can add to that.
Yeah, that's old wounds. I mean, that's just, I still angry about that, not re-signing him, because
sorry about that.
He wanted to play in Vancouver. And yeah, it would be so different him being on the team right now, because the Canucks need that secondary scoring. He had chemistry with Pettersson. He had chemistry with a lot of guys in this team, and he should have been a priority, not Ekman-Larsson, because Ekman-Larsson seemed to have been the problem that year. They couldn't re-sign Toffoli, Tanev. They were out on Markstrom really early, which, I mean, I'm fine with it now because what Demko's been doing. So, I mean, I'm okay with that. But the other two, I think Tanev would be helping out the Canucks as well here too. So, but Toffoli moving to a team, he's going to go to a playoff team, Stanley Cup contender. Calgary's a team that's been in the rumors. Him going there, I mean, I don't really want him back in this division because he's just a Canuck killer. He scores so much against the Canucks. I think he's we had a ton of goals last year against them. And I think he's over 20 plus goals against them in his career. So I don't really want him back out here unless he's going back to the Canucks, but that's the only way I want him back in the West.
So another question I had for you, Matt, I mean, heading into this year, I was pretty optimistic about the Canucks situation. I thought that as much as, unloading all the bad contracts at once to bring in Connor Garland and Oliver Ekman-Larsson, as much as that, had potential to burn them a couple years down the line, I did respect the idea that they thought that they can compete in this division, and bringing in guys like Garland and Ekman-Larsson instantly gives you a boost. Now, unfortunately, this season hasn't quite gone as well as I think maybe Canucks fans have hoped. They're seventh in the Pacific Division, I think, right now. I just want to know where you see the Canucks right now as a team. Do you think that they still have potential to, I know we just talked about them selling off pieces towards the deadline, but do you think they have potential to maybe scrape something and make a last minute push for the playoffs this season? And if not, then do you think they're trending in the right direction for next year?
Well, as you can see against the Maple Leafs, who are a top tier team, they didn't look like they could compete with them. As much as I love that they beat the Maple Leafs and Demko was great, the team didn't look good. I mean, these are the teams I was saying yesterday. These are the teams that the Canucks have to look competitive against to say that, yeah, we're a playoff team, because they didn't look like one yesterday. So many chances, like Peter said, the shot attempts were insane. And you can't be allowing that against the team. These are the teams that you're going to be competing against in the playoffs. And yeah, they may squeak in, but they're going to be playing a top end team, be it Vegas, Colorado, or not Colorado, but those types of teams. And I don't know if they can compete against them in a series, but you never know. Demko did it against the Golden Knights, and they were a much stronger team than they were at that point. So, I mean, a goaltender can take you far, but just looking at the team itself for this year, I don't think they're a playoff team. I would love to see them in the playoffs, obviously, but with experience, the young guys and stuff like that, but I don't think they're there yet. I do think they're trending in the right direction. Like I said before, I think Demko, you've got a great goaltender to lead off with. You've got a great defenseman in Hughes. I call him a franchise defenseman. I think he is. This is a guy you build around. Demko, as much as what Pettersson hasn't been doing that well this year, he's been kind of looking more himself. he's still a guy you build around. So, I mean, I think the team has a potential to be a great team in the next couple of years if they retool. I don't think they need to rebuild per se. I think they just need to get some other pieces and, figure out that cap situation, because they really can't have any movement with all those big contracts with Ekman Larson, Myers. Those are massive contracts, and Hughes now. They're going to have to deal with. And that's why Garland's been in the trade rumors after getting him, because you create cap space, and this is how it goes. But I think they're moving in the right direction. We'll see how the next couple seasons go, but I think they've got good pieces to move forward in the positive direction.
I think a big starting point would be to not trade away a first round pick, given how possibly they could be in a top 10 situation. And this is a pretty good draft with a lot of great talent. So I think that would probably be a great starting point. And like you mentioned, great pieces in Hughes, Pettersson, still going to be dangerous even when he's not. And of course, who can say anything bad about Besser and Miller at this point?
Yeah.
Well, Matt, we appreciate you hopping on to the Maple Leafs Lounge to give your take on the Vancouver Canucks, as well as that, game that we won't mention anymore, because once again, we get out-goalied, as is tradition with the Maple Leafs. But in all seriousness, if you haven't signed up, or if you haven't heard me the first 2 times, be sure to sign up and to our newsletter at morningskate.io. Again, you get a lot of fantastic articles and a lot of quick tips, updates, and news throughout the hockey writers community. And for Matthew Zator and Alex Hobson, I am Peter Baracchini, and thanks for tuning in to the Maple Leafs Lounge.